For this next video, we are going to take a look at detailing our erection view. Now, if you recall earlier this week, we did detail our anchor bolt plan, which was an erection view, but we are going to continue on with detailing the rest of our erection views. From our home screen here, if we go to Project Settings, under our Fabricator Setup, if we go into our Detailing section, and then into our Detail Erection View Defaults, this is where we can set up the defaults for how all of our views are going to be generated. The first thing we could set is our default steel member style. Again, we have stick, wire, solid, stick and wire, or stick and solid. We can specify our concrete member style, the rebar material style, and then we have the option for our 3D hidden line styles. Do we want those removed, dashed, or solid? We can show our 3D main material, our submaterial, shop bolts, field bolts, holes, shop welds, or field welds. We can show the stair outline. We can show the shear tab location on erection views. So if we take a look at this, we can see here, when we do check on the option to show shear tab location on the erection view, we are seeing that little shear tab indicator is going to indicate what side the member should frame on compared to the shear tab itself. If we don't show that, we don't see that indicator at all, so then that way it's up to the field to erect that properly. Next, we have the option to show concrete hatching if we have concrete, set the status display criteria, show crane placement, steel laydown, and then move the grid lines for the crane placements. We can reset the member line pens. We have the option to set the existing member pen color. We have the option to set the existing member line type. We can show vertical braces that are not in this plane, either as is, meaning the last time it was detailed, shown, or hidden. We can do the same for our horizontal braces. Then again, we can specify if we want to see our member orientation indicators. We have options for all, none, conditional, and as is. If I select conditional and bring up our specify conditions, we can specify based on the member and the material types of those members when we would see those member orientation indicators. In this case, I'm going to leave that at all. Where applicable, generate individual rebars instead of rebar run objects when the associated number of runs is less than or equal to. Again, we aren't going to make any changes here with that. For the annotations, being that we may end up redetailing some of these erection views, by default, I like to go in and check on the option for system. So that way, anytime we redetail this, the system will automatically remove the system drawing annotations. With the annotate erection views checkbox right below that, will automatically replace any of those system annotations that we have told the system to remove. We have the option to dimension grids above and left of the structure, below and right of the structure, and for both of those, if those are used, do we want to add an overall dimension with the above and left or below and right grid dimensions. We have an option to add overall dimensions to section view grids. So for example, that would be if we were in an elevation view, would we want to see the overall dimension between our grid lines? We have the option to annotate finite grid lines in place. If that is unchecked, we would not see any of those finite grid lines. We have the option to show grid names on non-plan views. So if we open up one of our elevation views, do we want to see the name of those plan views? We can show the height of the secondary grid bubbles, same as primary or below. And then dimension anchor bolt layout. Again, this is our defaults that we're looking at right now. So you aren't going to want to dimension your anchor bolt layout for your second floor plan or your roof framing plan, as that would hide anything that does not have an anchor bolt hole in it. So you just need to be careful with that you aren't checking this on, because it will remove those members if it does not have that hole type. We can explode the erection views, generate named locations, which again is not something we need to worry about right now. We can detail with revisions, specify the character height for grid bubble labels. we can specify a minimum piece mark and section size height allowed. We can show the elevation on members, either absolute, reference, or not show those if those differ from what the view was saved at. And then on the erection views, we can show camber on the member, show the custom properties on the member, show the section size on custom members. So that's going to be your stairs and rails, sag rods, anything like that. You have the option to denote non-standard material. So if you have a different steel grade than what is the default, do you want that to be called out? Do you want to show the number of studs on members? So this is if you are using the composite design. If composite design is checked on and you have a number of studs set in there, that is this number of studs that it's calling about, not manually added material. Do you want to see the member number on the erection view? Do you want to see non-standard field bolts? And then do you want to show field welds? If you're showing the field welds, do you want to show the field weld lengths? Next, we're going to take a look at our piece marks tab. In the piece marks tab, we can specify if we want to check the overriding of the piece marks and section sizes, relocate piece marks and other member labels to the default locations, allow the member piece marks to break lines and wire member edges. We can hide the joist piece marks, include the base plate minor marks on anchor bolt layouts, and then for our cross section and non-cross section marks, we have the option to show the new marks and section sizes, and we can specify what we want to do with our old piece marks and section sizes. We can leave those as is, hide those, or show those. Again, this is just the default, so if we've gone in and detailed any views, like we did with our anchor bolt plan, these changes are not going to be taken into the settings of that already detailed erection view. As soon as you go in and change any settings or detail that erection view, those settings are then stored within that erection view, and so then we cannot make any changes to the default of that. We would just have to go in, detail erection views, and then change the settings there. So let's go ahead and detail some of our erection views. I'm going to cancel this and go back to our model. What we need to do is we need to go to our erection view detailing. Again, we'll go to our drawings page, and then in our placement section, if we hover over that, we can see that it's detail erection views. I can select that, and it's going to bring up our select erection views window. Again, we can see that the one view we've already detailed, the AB plan, has a red icon there showing that it has been detailed as automatic. At this point, we're going to take a look at a few different settings. I'm going to start with the ISO. So if I select that and go into my settings, I'm going to leave this member style as wire. With that set as wire, the next thing we're going to take a look at here is setting up our status display criteria. For our isometric view, I want to show the different sequences in the different colors. For this, I'm going to check the option for set the status display criteria, and then I'm going to select define status. If you saved off that status display we used earlier, showing the different sequence colors, you could load that in here, but because I did not, I'm going to go ahead and change my colors. I'll go magenta for sequence 1, so it's going to be magenta when any of these are true, general status options, and then sequence. And I'm going to leave that from 1A to 1A. I'm going to add another priority, and instead of magenta, we'll make it olive. We'll go from 2A to 2A. And again, we'll go set up a third priority. I'm going to make that one royal when it's from 3A to 3A. Add another priority, and I'm going to make that one orange and make that from 4A to 4A. So once I have this status display set up, I can say OK here. I will give you a couple minutes here to finish this. With that set, we could go in and look at our annotations. And in this case, if I wanted to remove system, I could. If I don't want to annotate the erection view, I could uncheck that. I'm just going to leave this defaulted the way it is, and I'm not going to change anything else in here. So the only thing I change is the member style, and I set up a status display. Say OK. And so we have set the settings for our ISO. If I wanted to make changes to some of the other views, like maybe I want to go A, B, C, D, and E all one specific way, I can select that, and then holding my control key, I can single select and select more from this list. Maybe I want these views to be detailed in stick. If I go into my settings, I can see that is already set as stick. I can just say OK. My mezzanine, roof framing plan, and second framing plan, maybe I want those to be wire. So as you see there, I just click and then drag the mouse down and let go. I'll go into settings and I'll set that as wire. I'll say OK. And then the rest of my erection views, I can make whatever changes I want to those. Once I have all of these erection views set the way I want, I'm going to select everything but our AB plan. So I selected everything, and I'm going to hold down the control key and deselect AB plan. And now I'll say OK. We can see this is now generating our erection views. My erection views has finished detailing. At this point, I'll give you guys a minute or so to go ahead and let yours finish in case your computer may not be as quick. Once you are finished, we're going to go ahead and minimize our modeling window and bring up your home screen if you do not have that up currently. And with that open, we're going to go ahead and open up Drawing Editor. Again, that's this little T square down here at the bottom. We'll go ahead and select Erection Views, and then we can see all of our erection views are now listed in here. If I select ISO, we can see I now have all of those colors set up for my different sequences because I used my status display. We did a quick look at some of the erection view cleanup tools and stuff we have and how to work in Drawing Editor, but we'll take a little bit further look here. If you recall, we can just zoom in and out using our mouse wheel just like we could in the model. I can click and drag to move these different piece marks and section sizes around, but in this isometric view for my cover sheet, maybe I don't want to see those at all. What we can do is we can either go in and edit one of these members, or edit each individual member, and uncheck the option for piece mark and section size and say OK, and now we can see it got rid of that. Well, I don't want to have to go through and select that on each and every single one of these members. Another way we could do that is if I select this vertical brace, for example, and hit the delete key on my keyboard, it removes that member out. It'll keep those 3D polygon lines in there, but it physically removes that member, and I can no longer select that. Where in this one, we can see it allows me to still edit that vertical brace because I just hid the piece mark and section size. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that. And we're going to use a different tool here. In our drawings page, under our placement section, we have our EVU cleanup several, cleanup by location, by piece marks, or by member numbers. For this, we'll select EVU cleanup several. And I'm going to bring this window here towards the middle, and we're going to take a look at some of the different options with this. And here you have different options for your different characteristics, whether that's a piece mark, section size mark, left end elevation, right end elevation, camber mark, ABM piece mark, or the member line. Below that, we have the option to select all or clear for each of the different characteristics. And then we can select for our visibility across. So I can select the visibility for all the members or clear the visibility. Now when I have that visibility checkbox on, we can then go in and specify if we want to hide, show, or toggle between the show and the hide. And again, we can do this for each of our different characteristics. If we are showing that, we have the option to specify our pen number, our origin point, the height of the label, the width-height ratio, the rotation of those labels, and then the font and style, and if we want that to break lines or not. For our member line here on the right, we have the option to hide the member line or show, the color of that member line, if we want that to be solid, dotted, dashed, long dashed, dash dot dash, an L dash dash, or the L dash dash dash. We can specify our member style if we want that to be stick, wire, or solid, because we can change that on the fly here. We have the option for if we are using it in wire, do we want those hidden lines removed, dashed, or solid? On the left end, do we want to see the shear tab locators? And on the right end, the same. Do we want to show hatching, stair outline, the member orientation indicator, the scale of that indicator, and then if we have moments on the left end or right end. The last part of this is our filter here at the bottom. Do we want to filter or be able to select beams, columns, vertical braces, horizontal braces, joists, stairs, miscellaneous members, girts, or custom members? With this, I'm going to leave all of these checked, and then I'm going to use this little icon here to collapse that. Those three little arrows will just collapse this window down to this little guy here. I'm going to zoom out, and I'm just going to window around everything in here, and we can see it has selected all those. Then we're just going to hit enter on the keyboard. That is going to enact what I have set in there. So because I have everything set to hide for my visibility, as soon as I hit enter, it's going to remove all of those marks. So I hit enter, and now we can see it's removed everything. Once I'm done with this window, I can go ahead and just close out of that. And now we have completed using the tool. So for this example, this is exactly what we'd want. We don't want to see anything in our isometric view. If I'm done with this view, since I'm not going to be adding any annotations or anything, I can just hit the save button, or I can hit next drawing or open, and that'll prompt me to save. So I'm just going to hit save, and I can hit the next drawing button here. We can see that then takes us to our next erection view. An easy way to move between drawings is going to be to use the left and the right arrow on your keyboard. Right will go to your next drawing, and left will go back or to your previous drawing. So you can toggle through these or go through these different views pretty quick. But I'm going to go through and look at erection view A. I see all the members in here, and maybe I don't want to see like this vertical brace. It looks kind of messy, and if I hover over that, we can see that we don't physically see that because it's behind our column. I can again either double click on that and hide the piece mark and the member and the section size, say OK or enter on the keyboard, or in this case I have another one, I can just select that and hit delete and it's going to remove that. In this case, I'm not really too worried about that, so I don't need to worry so much about making sure I don't delete that. And if I do ever need to, I can open up my display options by going to my display page and here in our display section. And I can go show hidden members, say OK, and I can always go back and edit that label or that member to bring that back if I wanted. If I go in and just uncheck show hidden members again, we can see that is still hidden because I didn't go in and actually set that to be not deleted or not hidden. I can go in and move some of these different labels around as I need to. Maybe I want to move the B17 information below. Again, I can just click and drag to move those around. Maybe I want to move this B100 down. Again, I can just click and drag. Let's say maybe I wanted to add a line in here to kind of show where that's going. I could always go in and go line add and select wherever I'd want to add that line at and draw that in here. Again, if you don't want that line, you can always click and delete that out. So the line add will just allow you to select 2 points to add a line between, and you can continue going through and adding those. In Drawing Editor, you do have your undo command, so I can always go back and undo those changes. I can move things around, get this kind of cleaned up the way I want. And with that, if I select multiple labels at the same time, I can click and drag and move those together. So to select those, I just made my little window crossing over both the section size and the member piece mark. And because I went right to left, that's going to select anything that that box touches. If I go left to right, for example, we can see it is not selecting all of that. I would have to fully encompass those two labels, but doing so still works the same way. If I wanted to, I could bring grid lines down a little further. I could just come in here and click on that and drag those down. Well, as we can see, it's not moving those precisely. It's not snapping. So I have the whole dimension and grid line and everything selected. So I'm going to go Control Z for undo or this undo button, either way. But if I window around those again, I can right click and do a move/stretch, and I could specify where I want to bring those to. Maybe I want to bring it down just a little ways. I'm just going to single select here, and now we can see it brought those closer too. Once I have that the way I want it, I'm just going to hit save and go to my next drawing. On my next drawing here, so this is the AB plan we looked at earlier. Well, we did not mess with any of the scaling for that, or for the base plates. But let's say I wanted to. I can always go back and redetail this view. I went to my previous drawing because you cannot be in the same drawing that you're trying to detail. From my model, I'm going to go ahead and select Detail Erection View. I'm going to select my AB plan, go into Settings, go into my Annotations, and I'm going to set the Scale Anchor Bolt Layout, and maybe I'll change that to a scale factor of 2. Now, this may make it extremely large for those base plates, but I'm just going to say OK, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK here to the AB plan. That has gone through, so now I can change right back into my drawing editor. And if I go to my next drawing, we can see it is now scaled up those base plates significantly. So even though it shows that as a 6.5 inch dimension, if I came in here and added some construction lines, just like we do in the model, we'll just select construction line add, and add it here, and then this 6.5 is only going to that midpoint. And because I don't have a horizontal construction line, I can't snap to anything, so I'm just going to add one in here really quick. Again, our construction lines that we add will not plot, so we can add as many construction lines as we want in here, and we don't have to worry about those plotting. So using my dimension add, if I take a dimension between those 2 points, we can see that shows it as a 1'1" dimension. So because I scaled that at a factor of 2, that is showing as a 6.5 dimension, but if I take the actual dimension, it is actually 1'1", which is double that 6.5 inch dimension. I'm going to go ahead and redetail this AB plan and get those back to their normal size. So again, I'll go to my previous drawing. I'm not going to save this because I don't want to save any of those changes I made. I'm going to go to my model, and I'm going to select Detail Erection Views. I'm going to select my AB plan, go into Settings, Annotations, and then I'm going to uncheck the Scale Anchor Bolt Layout. I have talked about how removing drawing annotations, if I set that to none, but leave Annotate Erection Views checked, will show double the labels. We don't want to do this, but I'm going to show this just as an example. So I'm going to say OK, And then I'm going to go ahead and say OK here. Now that this is completed, let's take a look at that erection view again. Again, I'll go to Drawing Editor, and I'm going to go to my AB plan. Well, by doing that, we can see it brought those back down to their normal size or to actual scale. However, it does show double the amount of those labels. So we see 2 AB plans and 2 of the bottom base plate notes. And if I select like C, for example, and hit delete, we can see that is still shown in there. If I undo that, if I just click and drag that, we can see there is actually double labels there. So the only way to fix this is going to be by selecting and deleting that, and selecting and deleting every dimension. So like, for example, I have 2 25-foot dimensions there. I could go through and delete one of each of everything, or I can redetail this view. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'll go Previous Drawing, Save No. I'm going to go to my model. I'm going to select Detail Erection Views. Select that AB plan, Settings, and then in the Annotations tab, I'm going to remove the System Annotation. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to say OK again. And now if we take a look, now we can see we only have one label down here. And if I click and move C to the side, we can see there's only one. I'm going to use my Control Z to undo that. And we're going to look through some of these other erection views. So we saw A is stick, B, C, and D are all stick, and then E as well. We see our mezzanine level did show as wire. And again, I can go through and move, kind of clean these up however I'd want to, move labels around. Maybe I don't want to see these vertical braces because I'm only worried about this section. I could go in and delete some of that. At this point, I would suggest you go in and clean up or practice cleaning up these different erection views, how you would expect to see them. Again, that Annotate Erection Views checkbox we used only adds the dimensions between the grid lines and adds our label. If you need to add any dimensions, we'll just use the Dimension Add tool, and you could go in and snap at your different points if you needed to, and get your different dimensions. Again, after you select your 2 points, locate, you can continue on that chain, and it can also split those dimensions. If you don't want that or you're finished with the command, you can hit Escape on the keyboard, or you can right click. If we make a change in this, for example, maybe I delete out B71. Well, we see the member lines are still there. Well, that's just that 3D polygons. Well, if we take a look, I am on my roof framing plan. If I save that, go back to my model, and select Detail Erection View, we can see my roof framing plan is now a blue icon, which signifies that that is a manual detailing method. And what that means is that the member style is wire. If I select that and I want to detail this, we need to make sure we close out of that drawing first. So I'm just going to select that, change drawings, and then we'll go back and redetail this. Again, I want to verify my settings are set correctly. So it is not. So if I would have left that, didn't go into the Annotations tab here, changes to System, we would have had those double dimensions again and double labels. So again, just remove Drawing Annotations, System, say OK, and then I'll say OK here. This now brings up our Manual Erection View Detailing window. The Manual Erection View Detailing will allow us to hide, show, or specify how we want to show these different members. For example, maybe I don't want to see all of these members as wire. I could come in here, window around that, right click and set that to stick, and we can see that is shown as stick. So if I leave those as stick, and maybe I'll do the same with this canopy on the front, select those and go to stick, So we still see all of our beams on the perimeter and through the middle here are wire, and those others are set as stick. If I just close out of this view, that is going to then generate our erection view. Now that that is generated, let's go back to Drawing Editor, and let's open up our roof framing plan. So right there, I just hit Open View, and I'm going to select the roof framing plan and say OK. Inside of here, we can see it saved my user dimension, but it did show those members as wire and stick because that is how I specified it. If I need to make a change, if I wanted to see, for example, this member is wire, I can come in here, double click on that, and change this member style from stick to wire and say OK. And now we can see it's now showing that in wire. So we do have the option to change these members, how they are displayed on the fly. Again, I can come in here, delete out some of those using either the erection view cleanup tool or my different options of selecting, deleting, or just editing. So again, I'll show just how to delete or hide just these vertical braces that are part of this group member. For this, I'm going to use my erection view cleanup tool. In our drawings page, under our placement section, we have our EVU cleanup several, and then I'm going to leave all these set to hidden, but I am going to clear this filter and only have my vertical braces checked on. Now if I select everything in here, it's going to show that everything is selected, and I can collapse this if I want, but with those all selected, if I hit enter, we can see it only hid those vertical braces. Once I'm done with that, I can close it, and now we can see it's a little cleaner. I can move things around as needed. Maybe I don't want to see that lower beam here. I could delete that out, and I can move things around. Take some time to play with the dimensioning and adding of different dimensions, cleaning up or moving your different labels and everything that way. The last thing we're going to talk about in this video is our erection view member labels. This is going to allow us to control where we see our different marks. So our piece mark, our section size, we can control that both here in Drawing Editor as well as in our modeling window where we see the left end is holding our piece marks. For this, let's bring up our home screen. And then inside of project settings, I'm going to search for our erection view, and then I can see erection view member labels here. So I'm going to select that, and that brings up our erection view member labels. This can control our member piece marks, our section sizes, or any custom properties that are on here. If I go to our property name, I can go piece mark, the perspective, I can go lengthwise, and the horizontal position. By default is set to left, but if I wanted to, I could change that to the right end and specify if I want that above or below the member. So if I set that below and make that priority 1, I'm just going to say OK. Again, this is just an example of this, so I'll say OK here. We can see it has moved our labels here in the model as well. Now, if I redetailed my erection views, we would see those changes made. But in this case, I think we leave it here, and I'm actually going to change that back to the defaults, so that way we don't confuse whoever is erecting this structure. So again, I'll go erection view member labels. We'll say OK here, just so that way it all returns back to the way it was.